systematic, all the lectures. So I want to see at least 20, 25 lectures. We are now 10th, we are in 10th lecture. Okay. Welcome to today's lecture on gospel, culture, and the church today. Very essential topic in this course, gospel and culture. We have been studying, we looked at the theological and theoretical aspect of gospel and culture. And then last two classes, we looked at the historical church's perspective on gospel and culture. We have looked at different stages. And today we look at gospel, culture, and the church today. So, gospel and culture has an interrelationship, and this gives a direction to the church today. Where to go, how far to go. The three T's of the gospel. Number one, transmit. The three T's of the gospel. The gospel is transmitted through culture. No, gospel is an individual entity and it transmits through the culture. As I said, gospel transmitted to India and also particularly to Asian culture context through Western culture. And even now from South India, gospel transmitted to North India through South Indian culture. There is no wrong in it. Initially, it had to travel somehow. After traveling and transmitting, it has to be rooted into that particular local cultural context. There is no such thing as a pre-cultural or decultured Christianity. There is no pure gospel apart from culture. And sometimes our clergy, the pastors, and they claim saying that mine is the pure gospel. There is nothing such pure gospel. Gospel cannot travel without culture. You know, to prepare any gold chain or anything, they cannot simply make a pure gold as a chain. They have to mix something in that. Otherwise, gold will remain only as a tablet. It cannot be used as an ornament. In the same way, there is no pure gospel as such. Gospel need culture to transmit from one place to another place. So we cannot simply say, mine is the true gospel and theirs is a different gospel. No. Gospel need a culture. It has to be transmitted. And a matter of fact, we got the New Testament through a culture. You know, when they transmitted the truth into the first century Christians, they used ancient Near Eastern cultural context. They used the language, they used the forms, for example, John's Gospel, chapter 1. They used the concept called logos to communicate the pre-existence of Christ. No, the pre-existence of Christ. How best they can transmit that pre-existence of Christ to that particular cultural context. And today what we say, in the beginning was the Word was with God. That word in Greek, it is logos. That logos is not a biblical. It's not a, no, we cannot say it's a pure biblical. No, there is no word logos anywhere in the Bible. They borrowed that word from that Greek culture. In the similar manner, there are so many concepts that Bible adopted. So in the similar way, when we take the gospel from one place to another place, gospel need culture to transmit. Otherwise, it will become an abstract gospel. It will never communicate in a way that people can understand. And today, people are not able to understand the Christian gospel because we kept it like a tablet, the gold tablet. We don't want to transmit it into that particular cultural context. It is just useless. It is just a tablet. It is good. Gold is a pure gold. But it is not useful. It is useful only to keep under the box, maybe shut down, have a lock. That's the reason today in India, many Hindus, they never knew what is the gospel. It is a pure gospel and it is kept in a box, locked down it, and we are so boastful of saying that I have a pure gospel in a tablet form. And we have no guts and the courage to transmit the gospel into that particular cultural context. There is no such thing as a pure culture or decultured Christianity. Again, I'm saying that. There is no such thing as a pre-culture or a pure culture or a decultured Christianity. There is no pure gospel apart from culture. That's what I want to say. So therefore, gospel is transmitted through culture. The gospel transcends culture. Number two, gospel transcends culture. What is transcends? It is above the culture. Transcends. We have learned Christ above the culture. The gospel is always greater than any other single expression of itself. It can communicate in a multi-context. The gospel is embodied by culture, but given limited by it, but never limited by it. This calls for humility and openness. This calls for humility and openness. Today, in our Asian context, to transcend the gospel, to transmit the gospel, we need humility and openness to the cultures and the context of the pluralistic context of India and elsewhere. Because the gospel is embodied by culture. It is interlinked. Gospel and culture are interlinked. You cannot separate them. They are together. If you separate, you cannot transcend. You cannot transmit. So, number three, the gospel transforms the culture. The gospel transmits, transcends, and transforms culture. This, we are very well aware of this transformation because Christian missionaries are very good in transforming the culture, sometimes good and sometimes for bad. Many times for good transformation. They challenge the structures of the evil in the culture, like a casteism, a kind of evil structures that are deeply rooted in Asian cultural context, particularly in South India, the dowry system, a system that has really rooted the caste consciousness system and whatnot, the patriarchal male dominant system. Of course, it has really transformed, but there is a long way to go. Still, we are struggling with these issues. The Christians also practice in dowry, and there is now the culture of divorce, and all these practices are still there. But in history, we have evidences the gospel transformed the culture in several aspects. We need to appreciate the missionaries' work and the sacrificial investment of transforming the cultures that are really rooted with the evil systems and the evil structures. The gospel judges both the destructive and debased aspects of a culture, as well as drawing out the best, deepest, and truest parts. The gospel changes everything with which it comes in contact. Now, the gospel comes in contact. I still remember I have written a small paper for my History of Christianity course in my, I think, second year MD level. long back, way back in 1997. I still remember the Gosner Evangelical Mission in Gujarat. I think, what is that place? Chota Nagpur. An amazing transformation. This mission established there, and they have done an amazing transformation because the Jajmani system there oppressed the tribals, the marginalized, the harassed, and the helpless. These missionaries stood for justice, and they fought for justice and liberated these innocent peasants. There are a lot of historical Christian contribution in liberating the harassed and the helpless peasants, because it comes in context. The gospel changes everything with which it comes in context. Wherever the gospel goes, it transforms the structures. That is expected. But today, whether we're doing it or not, that's a different story. But the biblical gospel, wherever it goes, it transforms the evil structures of that particular society. Untouchability, casteism, caste consciousness, dowry, bribing. And these concepts, these evil structures are deeply rooted in our Indian social structure. But gospel need to transform them. Gospel has the power to break those structures. The gospel transforms the culture. And now, the gospel culture dialogue, number 2. Many Christians merely assume their views are aligned with the gospel, and that the gospel's chief aim is to address the worldly culture out there. Gospel culture dialogue, we're talking about it. Most of the times, Christians merely assume their views are aligned with the gospel, and the gospel's chief aim is to address the worldly culture out there. I've been talking about this worldly. What is the worldly culture out there? We try to find faults in that structures out there. That's true. We need to see, we need to be judgmental at times, and we need to see what is good and what is bad, and we need to transform there. But doing that, we need to be very cautious. We cannot blame everything as worldly. There are so many good cultural practices out there, and we need to look at them and we need to appreciate them, because Jesus appreciated the good in other cultures. But George Hansberg argues that the gospel culture dialogue is centered in the church. Gospel culture dialogue is centered in the church. You know, this dialogue we should initiate within our community. The gospel should transform the evil structures within the church. Yesterday I said, church and the lighthouse. First, the church should shine in the darkness. These evil structures need to be transformed within the church. Caste consciousness. Shame on us today. Shame on us. When it comes to the marriage, when it comes to the marriage, even the church elders or even the pastors, they look at whether the girl is my own caste. The caste consciousness. Of course, sometimes we need to look at because of the various sociological backgrounds, but our intention should be pure in the sight of God. But still, church, there is a long way to go. Changing the structures, deeply rooted corruption, bribing, right here in the church, the Christian community, practicing all this. Bribing is very much rooted in the church. You may be wondering, some of you, many of you, I think many of you are in this, working for a government or a private sector. You are ignorant of it, because you are very much happy with the salary that you get. You don't keep your hands on that dust, and but when you enter into this so-called full-time, because these people have given a false information saying that full-time is sacred and secular is that is not for God working. Come to full-time ministry. But let me tell you, full-time ministry is the most, today particularly, we are talking about the church today, the most wicked structures and worldly culture is there in the full-time ministry. The casteism, the caste consciousness, the bribing consciousness, what I get from him if I appoint him or maybe if I promote him. That's the reason George Hansberger very vehemently he says, the dialogue is centered in the church. We need to initiate the dialogue to transform the so-called Christian NGOs, gospel, church, and the culture. Now, the gospel should transform the church. Yesterday, we have seen the historical background. The church on the hill, lighthouse, attracted multitudes. That was the mission model of the early church, first and second centuries, where the Christianity has not really rooted into the structured model. It was a kind of praxis model. They were not really bothered about strategy, winning, this and that. They were bothered only about the holiness and pleasing God and living for God and living for God in all aspects, inside purity and outside purity. But today, the church is very much focused on outside, not inside. That's the reason George particularly emphasizes in the gospel and the culture context is we need to see inside. The gospel's first encounter is always to be with the church as it lives within its cultural situation. Inner dialogue. Inner dialogue. And today we have so many people, fascinating. People are very crazy, challenging people out there. Outside dialogue in the TV, on social media, outside dialogue. That's essential. I'm not denying it. Yes, we need it outside dialogue because Jesus said, go and witness, and we need to defend our faith. Yes, we continue to do that, but more essentially, we need inner dialogue. Particularly the post-independent India, because that's my area of interest in research. Indigenous Christian missions that evolved, mushroomed like a mushroom in the post-independent India. Particularly in 1970s and 80s, multitudes of mission agencies evolved. Most of their vision and strategy is only dialogue out there, conquering mindset. You go set up your organization and expand. What expand? It's not the kingdom of God, your own mission agency. How many missionaries I have, how many churches I established, either hook or crook, with all kinds of wicked strategies, getting money from abroad, dollar-driven strategies to fundraise and expand the kingdom. But where is the inner dialogue? The gospel's first encounter is always to be with the church as it lives within its cultural situation. Gospel and the church. When this transforms, then these two, gospel and the church, creates a biblical culture. What is the biblical culture? Church on the hill, shining in the darkness. When the Hindu community look at this, they get attracted. They say, wow, what an amazing transformation. And today, that is very much lacking because we don't understand the culture. The church embodies gospel because the gospel's second encounter unfolds as the church, which embodies the gospel in a new way of life. In a new way of life, encounters others who share the culture, outer dialogue. Here I am talking about the inner dialogue and outer dialogue. Yes, when do we do that outer dialogue here in this manner. The gospel's second encounter unfolds as the church, which embodies the gospel in a new way of life. How the church gets this new way of life? Having deeply rooted into the integrity, honesty, and faithfulness, the discipleship, and having that Christ likeness. And today, who cares discipleship? Who cares integrity, honesty, and faithfulness? Only the outer dialogue important. How the outer dialogue takes place? Having a proper inner dialogue. The gospel in a new way of life encounters the others. Most of the times when people teach the gospel and culture, they 24/7, whole course they teach the outer gospel out there, finding blame in the other culture and attacking with a kind of conquering mindset like a British Raj type of crusade mindset. No, that's the reason this course, I took a paradigm shift. I'm taking kind of inner dialogue. This is the 10th lecture. Lecture number 1 onwards, I'm talking about the inner dialogue, the inner transformation. When we have that inner transformation, that leads to, that encounters others who share the culture, outer dialogue, because they share the culture. Church embodies gospel, and then it leads to culture. That's the reason I said gospel and the church. When there is a transform, when there this interlink, this relationship is really dynamic. That influences culture out there. That transmits the gospel. That transcends the gospel, and then that transforms the gospel. Otherwise, gospel will not transmit into a cultural context. Gospel hasn't really transmitted into the Indian cultural context. It is an abstract gospel. We think, oh, church in India is, we have done everything. Oh, here is a church in Hyderabad, finished, reached. What is not, what is unreached? Only there in the Araku Valley. Now Araku Valley also filled with a lot of missionaries. There are more missionaries in Araku Valley, more clergy in Araku Valley than in Hyderabad sometimes. Everybody said, I have a mission work. I have a pastor there. I don't know whether it is true or not. If we combine all these mission magazines and see, oh my God, there may be a big, more than the population of Araku Valley, these all mission organizations, they give that number. They say, I have these many churches, these many believers. We don't know whether they are true or not, but they say, they claim, even published magazines, pictures, a lot of pictures also. So that's not my issue here. The living exegesis, number 3. In other words, the gospel first meets culture in the church as we are confronted and shared by its claims. What is church's claim? We claim so many things. What not? Even you can go back and sit. We claim so many claims. We say we are the best. We are the only people who go to heaven. Of course, this is true. But that needs to be, we need to have that inner dialogue. That inner dialogue brings transformation. Likewise, culture first meets the gospel in the church as we become its living exegesis, other dialogue. The church should become a living exegesis. What is living exegesis? They should see that exegesis in the church. Shame on theological institutions across the globe. They spend hours and hours, years together for exegesis of the Greek text, the Hebrew text, but nobody teaches how to do an exegesis of the culture. Nobody bothers the exegesis of the inner life. Because I know, I'm a professor and even still I travel. Because of the corona, I'm not moving out, but I am a teacher. Okay, nobody cares the spiritual life. Of course, there are some seminaries who gives one course, spiritual formation, in the first month of the incoming students, and then that's it. They don't bother about later. In the church, as we become its living exegesis. And today it's a challenge. Where are the churches who are living exegesis? That's the reason yesterday I said the church in that first and second centuries, that little community was like a lighthouse on the hill. The others could see that church as a living exegesis. And today, if you and I are the living exegesis for the people out there, that's the great model. That's the great strategy. We don't need to go and trumpet out there to say that I am better, you are wrong. But the living exegesis become the outer dialogue. You don't need to sit at the table and argue. We need to have that living exegesis inside the church. That's the reason John particularly says that the dialogue inside. And we are talking about the dialogue inside and outside. Most of the times we give time for the dialogue outside, but here George particularly he emphasizes living inside dialogue. The gospel culture dialogue. We are talking about gospel culture dialogue. Gospel church and the culture. Number 4, being a missionary church then is not first of all about the church's outward moving action. What is outward moving action? The strategy, the fundraising, this strategy and that strategy. Of course, that is important, but outward moving actions, what are they? Going, sending, serving. But about its very character. Being a missionary church. Oh, people claim, oh, mine is a missionary church. Mine is a missionary church. No, we are mission-minded. We are mission. Do you remember these words? Every church claims we are a missionary-minded. You know, we are a giving church. We are a sending church. Of course, they are important. Being a missionary church then is not first of all about a church's outward moving. We are talking about inward and outward. But today, we are talking gospel culture and the church today. That's the reason I am just focusing on directly on the topic. Church today, 21st century, even now in the corona context. A friend of mine posted in the group with a great a Tamil friend. He posted in the group saying that in front of my eyes, my church has done nothing to these migrants or people who are struggling on Chennai streets. Even people are dying. But these people are so busy on this and that, you know, and he is very expert in doing films and photography, and very expert, very skilled, very godly also. He says, the church people asking him what kind of camera I should buy. Why? This fellow from Bangalore recently tells me, the more photographs, the more money. Shame on him, he asked me, send me more photos. Useless fellow, get out from me. He says, more photos, more money. This is the concept today. I'm not lying, because there are hundreds of people watching on Facebook. They'll catch me later. More photos, more money. When? The corona context. Morphing some of the corona pictures. You know, some fellows are doing dramas also. How can we expect that God works? That's the reason being a missionary church then is not first of all about a church's outward moving. You know, we may have a lot of argument. The other day somebody was telling, oh, the Hindus, gurus are doing so bad. Of course, they're doing. That's not a license for us to do. So that's not a license for us to do. Maybe 1,001 people are doing all bad things. That's not a license for us to be bad. No. Jesus said, even if you only one fellow in the whole globe, you should do good. Maybe everybody was on the wrong side. Only you are there. No, you alone can travel in that narrow road. That's the reason. Kingdom of God is a very strange road, and it is a very narrow road. So that's the reason today the church in the today. I'm talking about the church in the corona context also. Being a missionary church then is not first of all about a church's outward moving actions. Why church took a wrong shape in post-independent India after 1947? The word missionary became an abomination, very bad word. People are not really interested in those words because, grateful to God for pre-independent era, the white missionaries had an amazing work. They went an extra mile. They set up their mission stations in the villages, and they lived the gospel in those villages. They gave education, they gave medicines. Not only that, they lived like a gospel, transparent. But in post-independent era, what happened? This church growth philosophy particularly brainwashed mission agencies, saying that, oh, Christ is coming, and by hook or crook, go, 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 go. They have not allowed young fellows to get into good jobs and be a witness. They brainwashed the people, sent to the tribals and Dalits concerts, and then whatnot, slum areas. And of course, they have done, there are so many good people. The majority of them have not really lived up to the expectations of the text. Going out became so priority than having an inward dialogue. By hook or crook, you get the money, you send people, and then Christ is coming, you evangelize. But looking at inside dialogue was not priority. That's the reason being a missionary church then is not first of all about a church's outward moving actions. And today, in mission agencies, conferences, here and there, Thailand, here and there, mission conferences do happen because all honeymoon mission agencies. Because these fellows have to get out of the country once in 6 months. And they gather here and there like a honeymoon mission conferences. Who is the great boss there, The one who has a many churches, a lot of numbers. I have 1,000 churches, I have 100 churches. Those are the white collar fellows. Even they only get the funds. But here actually the truth, the biblical truth is here. It's not moving out important. Actions, going, sending and serving. Of course, they're essential. I am not so critical of them. I also am a man of moving, sending and serving. I am a man of actions. I do believe in that. We need to do that. But when it comes to the priority, inside dialogue and outside dialogue, but about its very character. Now, the very character is important. Pre-independent era, particularly during the even 1940s and 50s and 60s, God has raised amazing leaders who gave priority to the character. Because I have done enough research on indigenous missions in India. Again, I'm mentioning some of the names. The USA movement founded by Professor Enoch, Rabak Singh, and even Brother Daniel, who founded this layman's evangelical missions. And many godly people like Father Devadas, who was the founder of this Bible mission. Of course, today it became a controversy. I don't want to get into controversies, but these people, they were people of God. And later on, people have gave a lot of other quotings, and they gave so much theologies. Even Father Devadas never wrote any book. He never wrote any book. But his followers keep on writing, even now also saying that Father Devadas did it, which is a very foolish thing. He never developed any such writings. He established some of them. Even some of the things, even now in my boxing church, they boast about it. They don't want to focus on that character level. boxing. He focused only on character. There were no strategies, no, like going, sending, serving, all cricket strategies. The only one strategy is kneeling down, praying, and deriving strength from God. Particularly pre-independent era, the workers have developed that inward dialogue. If there is something, even I remember as an young boy, even to sit, just to stand on that pulpit to give vote of thanks, maybe 2 minutes of vote of thanks. We used to see so many categories, whether he is born again, how is his life, how is his studies, is he really studying well? He may be a believer, but if he is not well in studies, we used to pull him out. But who cares? A fellow who is a rugged, who never take bath, having such a big belly and a heavy fellow, having a lot of set, he should be the drum beater. We never see whether they're really spiritual or not, and we need only some people to manage the show. This character develops not when a church or its representative levels at geographic location. Rather, it happens when a church takes leaves of cultural loyalties aligned to the gospel. Takes leaves of cultural loyalties alien to the gospel. Cultural leaves. Now, if the plant needs to grow, the plant needs a stem. The stem should have leaves. So, in the same way, church takes, may not be the LEAFS leaves, but leaves the cultural loyalties aligned to the gospel. Only as we are deeply different as a Christian community can we move out to make a difference. Here is a point. The dialogue should happen in the church, today's church. We should stop all this halagola business of so much sound out there. The church should focus inside. That's the reason. God is amazing. He is crazy. And today what God is doing by allowing this Quran to spread across the globe, God is refining the globe. He is refining the church. He is refining the church, saying that, hey guys, you be inside, look at inside, have an inner dialogue, come on knees and spend time with him. But no, these foolish fellows, they don't want to listen to God also. Sometimes my church people are very foolish. They don't want to listen to God also. No, they want to give advice to God. Opening the churches and getting corona inside. A lot of pastors are dying. I got a call yesterday, and even today also I got a call. Who cares? God said, hey guy, you guys, you be inside. Don't go out. But they say, no. How long we should be inside? We are not taking bread and wine. Sometimes bread and wine became like a prasadam. They don't want to, they think God's blessing will come through bread and wine. It's a fall. We need inner dialogue. That's the reason God allowed situations to be inside, have an inner dialogue. People are now having inner dialogue. What is church? What is mission? And what is our strategy now? God shook the world. He shattered the wicked strategies, and God is refining the mission context. There is no money now in the West. The money is stopped. And now people are thinking how best we can depend on God. Only as we are deeply different as Christian community, we can move out to make a difference. That's what's happening today. Deeply different as a Christian community. Now the Christian community is looking unto God, having an inner dialogue and trying to understand what God says and what is church, what is mission, what is witness. These all terminologies are taking a different shape. You see, 10 years from now, everything will be different. Not only because of the corona, because of the political pressure and because of our Hindu friends. They are teaching us. They are teaching the church what is mission and how we can do. 3 levels of mission. Number 1, Harold Turner says that the church's engagement with culture can take place on 3 levels. What are those 3? Number 1, individual and personal level. Church's engagement with culture, it starts with the individual and personal level. If the individual level and personal level, if the individuals know how to engage with the culture, that will be a great transformation. Surface cultural level. No, it's also a little bit theory. I make it very slow, and I make it simple for you to understand. Surface cultural level. And then deep cultural level. Individual level, surface level, and deep cultural level. What is surface? Only peripheral level. We think, oh, this is good. This is what. But culture is more than what we think. We know only Hindu culture in a surface level. We never try to understand in the deep cultural level. If we really understand in a deep cultural level, we will not be so much critical. For example, in North India, particularly as I said yesterday, if the grandpa is in the veranda, this young little boy comes from the hostel after an year. As he enters into the gate, he touches the grandpa. It's just without his knowledge also, because that's the way he greets. He touches the feet and he rushes to inside. And then the way of he touching, if we really study it in a deep cultural level, we understand what does it mean. But if we look at only surface level, we think, oh, he is worshipping his grandpa. No, that's nonsense. Yes, in a Hindu cultural context, the people those who died, the forefathers, particularly, there is a concept called worshipping the forefathers. But they're alive, it is just a respect. So we need to look at that in a deep cultural context. Even with the same thing, a lot of symbols, the ornament they wear, the dress they wear, there is a deep cultural context we need to understand. For that, let me explain the 3 levels of mission. Surface culture, number 1, what deals with social customs and practices such as diet, dress, housing, entertainment, music, art, and literature. No, I came to Christ because this man sat in that meeting hall with the sitar. My friends forced me to get into that meeting. I went and I wanted to run away. There is no other way. I had to get into that meeting hall near to Nagar University in a small, tiny village called Nambur. This tiny village. There is no way that I can come out to Guntur. As I entered into the meeting hall, I saw this man sitting with Padmasan, having sitar in his hand playing. A kind of temple environment, the music, the art, the sitting posture, and a kind of bhajan style, that touched my cognitive mind and made me to sit. I don't know all that philosophy and theology, but that gave me a kind of build a bridge for me to sit there. And it took time for me to understand, and I gave my life to Christ. That's a different story. But most of the Christians, they say, how can this sitar can come into the church? Sitar was in the hands of Saraswati. You know, there are some foolish pastors who say, you know, the devil comes through those instruments. Even to this instruments, they do bhajan, no, with talam, they call. It's a very simple instrument. If you have a talam and sit, no, it's an amazing. You enjoy the presence of God. But where is it in the church? You try take it to your church, immediately your pastor will tell you, throw it away. Because why? The devil will come through that. I'm talking about. Because they have looked at the culture only surface level. So in a mountain, in some of the seashores and inside the sea, these icebergs, ice mountains will be there. You know, you might be well aware of this Titanic ship, which was cracked. You know how it cracked? The driver saw only the surface level the snow mountain. He thought only it's a small surface, only it's a small peak. What it can do to this huge, world famous, gigantic Titan ship. He hasn't seen the inner level. The ship hit and collapsed, died, everybody died. When we look at the other culture, either it is a Hindu culture or any other people of other faith culture, we look at only surface level. We make judgmental statements and our attitude only by looking at the surface level. What I want to say, surface culture deals with the social customs. Only we see the social customs and we understand, oh, that's a Hinduism. Social customs and practices such as diet, dress, housing, entertainment, music, art, and literature. We look at only surface level and we throw over them. We really lost the Indian cultural context. Diet, dress, housing, entertainment, music, art, literature. So deep culture deals with the underlying worldview, including beliefs about success, beauty, modesty, and cleanliness, definitions of right and wrong, the self or truth, conceptions about the value of community, competition, work, material goods, and etc. and etc. So as we are talking about this gospel culture and the church today, we need to understand the deep worldview, the deep culture. We need to dig inside and see the deep inside. What does it mean? Why do they do this way? What is the deep inside worldview of the culture? Then we know the self-truth, conceptions about the value of community and competition, work or material goods, and etc. Surface culture reflects deep culture, but this relationship is not fixed. Of course, it may reflect like a shadow. The surface culture on the top may try to reflect the inside deep culture, but it will not really help us to understand what is there inside. Sometimes when we look at the people of other faiths, the surface level, we may think, oh, they are like this. Their dress, their eating habits, their way of things, their philosophy is this, and then we estimate what is there inside. No, we need to go deep down, understand. That's the reason we need to get into their text, we need to read, we need to understand, and we need to make friendship, and we need to ask questions. We need to ask questions. What does it mean? And we need to visit, and we need to help them to understand what we believe. And we need to ask questions why they believe. And then the surface culture reflects deep culture, but this relationship, it is not fixed. Multiple groups, each with its own surface. We need to look at the deep culture from multiple aspects. But we look at only from a Christian perspective. Only Christian perspective. That too only Western perspective. You and I will be cheated. We need to look at from different multiple dimensions to understand the deep culture. We are in the surface level. To understand the deep culture, we need to have the socio-political, economic, and religious context. We need to go beyond to understand why they do that, what they do that, why they behave like that. Anthropologists are very good in understanding that the deep level cultural context. That's the reason they do, most of the anthropologists, they do ethnographic studies. So missionaries in the pre-independent era, they did ethnographic research. But today, researchers, they are not giving priority for ethnographic research. Maybe I'll teach one course on research methodology. I will teach what is ethnographic research. Bible schools, 99.9%. apart from mission studies, a few mission studies, that too, they also select library studies. What is library? Only app study. You sit in the library, you pull books here and there, and you write a paper, you write thesis and throw out there and you go. They have no contact with outside people. Only some mission studies people, they do empirical research. What is empirical research? You just go out and conduct some interviews and give some questionnaires and qualitative and quantitative research, and they bring data to the library, sit there, and people's opinion. And you make some charts and you try to find out some findings and you publish, that's it. But what is ethnography study? Ethnographic study is something that you go to the field, you live there, you stay there for a few days. Because when you are in the library, you read some books here and there, you this quotation, that quotation, what this scholar said, that scholar said, you compile and you wash your hands. You don't know exactly. You depend on people's opinions. But even the empirical study also like a people's opinion. You just go and interview and bring it, but it's better than library research. Empirical research is field studies somewhat better than the library research. But this ethnography study understands the deeper level culture, the worldview, because they go and live there 1 year, 2 years, 6 months. They don't depend on all here and there. Of course, for literature review, they read something in the library. They want to check what they have read in the library is true or not. They come to a particular tribal area, they live there 6 months, and then they bring out the theory from the surface. They go to from surface to the deep level. For my PhD research, I have used all three levels. I was in the library, collected for my theoretical framework, and then I did questionnaires, interviews. I went in here and there. Of course, I lived with the people. I was in what is this Srikakulam. I was in this tribal people for a few months, and then I was in Khammam, the Yerukala, Chanchu, Yanadi tribes, and also I was in a few weeks in Araku Valley, and I was there with the people. I asked them, why are you singing? What is your way of doing? Why are you doing like this? Instead of having only surface level, I went into the deep level of understanding. Ethnography is the multiple groups, each with its own surface culture, may share a common worldview. So multiple groups. You have this group, that group. 3 levels of mission we are trying to understand. Multiple groups, each with its own surface. In the surface level, may share a common worldview. It looks like all are similar, all are same. That's what in a pluralistic context of India, we think all religions are same. Everything is same. You and I, everybody look like same in a surface level. That's the reason when we go to the deep level, then we know the truth. And a single group united by a single surface culture may actually include those with very different worldview. From the surface level, you just go deep down to the worldview in a different level. You dig. You go into the different levels, you understand. Thus, a relationship between surface culture and deep culture is flexible. Surface level and deep level is flexible. When you go to the different dimensions. 3 levels of mission. For instance, a Christian group may distance itself from society at the level of surface culture without making more fundamental departures at the level of deep culture. On the surface, the faith community may appear to be distinct from those around it. But at the deeper level is really not counterculture at all. Donald has described this condition as being of the world, but not in it. Even Jesus said, you are in the world, but not of the world. of the world, but not in it. So, of course, my time is up. I'm concluding the three levels of mission as we continue to see support. On the other hand, converts, the followers of Christ, emerging from a pagan or a secular worldview into a biblical one, may bring with them customs and practices that are new to the Christian subculture. Because when they come from a different cultural context, they bring their cultural way of greeting, particularly when people come from other faiths. When they come with their way of namaskar. I still remember when I became a follower of Christ, I visited a family and I said, Namaskaram, sir. He said, hey, don't say that. You call me Anna. Give me a shake hand. Now, that is good because that's a culture. But when I go back to my own community, I will be, because I am brainwashed, practiced, because as I practice, it comes there also in the village. Hello, Anna, if I say to other friend, because I am behaving like an abnormal candidate there. Customs and practices comes with the different cultural practices. Particularly, we are talking about people from other faiths. They come with the different food habits. Mostly some, I don't know, because of the cultural context, it is a culture. There is nothing. Every food is good. All foods are good. And by prayer, everything will be sanctified. But because of the background culture, he or she may come with the different food habits. Some people, they may not eat beef. But when he comes into the church, if he or she doesn't eat the beef, he will be looked at as an alien and a practice. Forcefully, this individual had to be learned eating a Christian way of eating in the church context. What happens when you go back, the family, they will ask, because they ask to harass. I know, are you eating beefs? Because he has to speak the truth. Said, yes, that's it. That's it. He will never have a bridge to communicate the gospel. He becomes an untouchable there. If he doesn't practice those things here, he becomes an untouchable here. That's the reason. Once I have written a paper called Yeshu Bhakta, a double rejected individual struggling for his existence. I call these people from other faiths are Yeshu Bhaktas. They have a double rejection. Rejected by there in their own community, rejected by here in this new community. They're neither there nor here. It's a struggle for many individuals because of the ignorance, because they don't know what is the culture and practices that are new to the Christian subculture. What is the Christian subculture? Because Christian subculture has a different cultural practices. These elements of surface culture, if not inherently evil or destructive, may be adopted and reinvested with a new meaning from the biblical worldview. What I want to say, when these followers of Christ coming from different cultural contexts, these elements that they bring from outside, surface culture, if not inherently evil or destructive, for example, coming with a different type of dress, having a different type of foods, and having a different type of habits, like, having some kind of forms. If they are not destructive, because how do you know that they are not destructive? You need to go to the deep inside cultural context. You should ask the individual, why are you wearing this? Why are you having this? Why are you behaving like this? Then they will say, I don't know anything about Hindu Shastras. I'm just, it's a culture. I need to have it. My people understand me if I go this way. If they are not destructive, we should not disturb them. But what happens, whether they are good or bad, we completely brainwash. And maybe I will be teaching how the church has done damage to the people of other faiths by changing names, changing so many things, this, not this. So we will be looking at the subjects in another way. With a new meaning, we should adopt them and give a new meaning from a biblical worldview. Christian mission, if it is to affect real change in society and in the lives of individuals within that culture, must be targeted at the deepest level. This deep mission is modeled in the ministry of Christ. who sought to establish what has been described as an upside down kingdom. Upside down kingdom, overturning the deepest notions of culture about righteousness, wealth, sin, power, and greatness. And greatness. Here ends the lecture today, and it's also a kind of theory. We get into the praxis, and then we see the mission praxis, and we try to understand how best we can communicate the gospel in a multicultural context. Today, we stop here, and I take questions from you. And those who haven't attended the class, they can see the video and they can do the assignments. Then they